All right, Kevin, back with you, and we are here for another edition of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Krisstina Wise. Krisstina, welcome. So awesome to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I think I'm just looking at the back of my office here behind me. People will probably put two and two together. We're recording this around Christmas. And my office is like the Christmas present storage area, and you see part of that, but over there it's a really big part. We got a big family. I've got 7 children, 6 grandchildren. We got lots of people we like, and we also we support some just family. We get some families through like the local food bank, and then we go and buy gifts for them too and stuff. And so my wife handles most of that wrapping there, but this is the staging area, I guess. So, well, Krisstina, I just have to say, I want to start by giving a shout out to Garrison Cohen, because he is the one that connected you and I, and what a testament to the power of relationships, which is what this podcast is all about. And Garrison, I'm trying to remember. I have to look back to see who connected Garrison and I. But man, Garrison is just, man, what a brilliant guy he is, and we've become really close. And him and I have had some amazing conversations. I absolutely love the way that his mind works, and just by the conversations that we've had and the questions he's asked me, is just giving me insight and perspective that I didn't used to have before, which is really useful. And so I want to give him a shout out for connecting us. And with that, I want to turn it over to you, Krisstina, so we can set a little bit of context here and give the listeners an idea of who you are, Krisstina, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you do, and even give us some background into how you got into doing what you
Oh gosh, that's such a loaded question. And first of all, a big shout out to Garrison. I love and adore Garrison, and he's such a gift to this planet and this world.
do. Yeah.
And I met Garrison. He attended one of my events, is where we originally met, and where I've met a lot of people that are now in my network, if you will. And the event he came to, which leads into what I do for a living, it's an event at that time. It's actually a funny story. That was the last event that I did prior to COVID. I had it in February in COVID of 2020, and COVID broke out like the first week in March. So it was right there. But the event is on wealth creation and how to create wealth and financial freedom. So that's what I do. And I teach people how to think about money and how to practically use their money in a way that creates the financial freedom or time freedom that ultimately we're all after. And I do that through events and programs. I have a money school, and I teach entrepreneurs how to really cash flow their money so that not only does it make money for hopefully a nice lifestyle, but also it creates money to build wealth and that freedom that we all want. So that's what I do. And I love talking about money. I love talking about business. I've been a business owner and an entrepreneur since I was 25. I really believe I'm unemployable, so this is the only option I have. And I've been successful at business, but I studied money and I've studied business seriously as a student. And I've worked with so many mentors and leaders to teach me, I think, a very uncommon way to think about money and to, like I said, to use money so that it really supports the life that we want to build for ourselves. What's interesting about that is that I studied money and wealth creation under one domain, and I did that separately. And that was under this personal desire. So I studied this personally. I studied money and wealth creation personally as part of my personal desire to build this freedom that I wanted. And, I studied this over there. And then on this other side, I studied business. And a decade of being in business school one way or another to really understand how business operates, because I wanted to be a successful business owner as a way to make a lot of money and fund my life.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about, as a student of these two disciplines, if you will, they didn't connect at all. All my business study was how to build a successful business and make a lot of money in business. And all my wealth education was how to invest and how to make money on investments.
Okay.
Really, they didn't connect. And so what I do now is I teach entrepreneurs what I learned through both of those studies, but the importance of integrating both business and wealth creation, that this becomes a strategy that is not about being successful at business, and it's not about being successful at having a lot of wealth or net worth. It's about creating a good life that it has enough money to fund our lifestyle that you and I live today, while building our net worth so that we can be financially free, so that we don't have to work this hard sometime in the future for that future self. But what I found in these studies, it's like wealth and business are the outcome. And like, no, the outcome is relationships. The outcome is experiences. The outcome is having a life that's fulfilling and meaningful and healthy and enough time space. And it's not where we're stressed out all the time and where we're always, working for, some target down the future. So when we start with end in mind of what is a good life, and we ask that question, then we can say how much money and wealth and business success is required so that I can have that time to enjoy life. So that's what I do today, is bring these disciplines together. And so we have like a holistic approach for building life that's meaningful.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That what you just shared, Krisstina, it hits on such a personal level, because I've had all these experiences in my own life over the years, and I remember, I started fishing in Alaska as a commercial fisherman on the Bering Sea in 1988. And I did that until 1995. So for 7 years, I did that job. And I will tell you, that is the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And when I was a kid, my dad, he would always tell me, he's like, Kevin, the harder you work, the more successful you will be. My dad passed away when I was just 16, but that was his experience. He was giving me his best advice. And so, after years later, when I became a fisherman, there was many times I was out on that boat on the Bering Sea going, man, Dad, if you can see me now, I hope you're proud, because, man, this is some work right here. And I did make good money. In fact, the very first year I was up there, 1988, I went up there in January of that year, and I worked in several different fisheries, but I stayed all the way through October for 10 months. In 1988, I would have been 23 years old. And at the end of that 10 months, I came home with about $120,000. That was after taxes. That was after everything. And I'll tell you what, at 23 years old, that was some dang money in my mind. I mean, and yet, I used that money to start my first business. And I started that first business in 1995. And between the time I started that business in 95 and in about 96, about 1 year later, I had blown through $300,000 of money that I had saved up, and I still hadn't figured out how to make that business profitable, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I've had these different experiences with money. Where I've had what people would say is lots of it, and then I've had other times where I had very little. But I did not until, now that I do what I do, I understand, and what, you and I are in such alignment when it comes to relationships. But I did not have the understanding that I do now, is the same that you just talked about, is that, when I use my gifts, my God-given gifts and my skill sets and my unique abilities, and when I serve the right people, the natural byproduct of that is that revenue gets created. And when I serve the right people, I am so doggone valuable to them. Because it's not just what I bring to the table; it's who they are too. It's the co-creation and collaboration that what makes it so doggone valuable. And so I just, I never saw that coming, Krisstina. And I don't usually do this on this podcast, but that really hit home personally. And I have a feeling that a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I think this is going to hit home with them. And so thank you for that. Because like I said, that I never saw that coming. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. So part of the, my personal story and journey that fits into this, and where, we've kind of wound up why I do what I do today, is that what's interesting about that story is that, like I said, I studied as a really rigorous student, these two disciplines. I studied business and I studied money, like I said, separately. And I'm a good student. I'm a good student. I learn, I apply, I create, and I turn what I learn into, let's say, money. And I did both of these. Again, I was a great student and I applied the knowledge and I did well. So during all these things, during this time frame, I built a good amount of wealth through real estate. I'm a real estate investor. So I did well in real estate investing. I was studying that and became good at it and understood like the fundamentals of being able to invest, the financial, what's required to save the money to invest and then actually investing it, which means I didn't spend all the money I made. I actually saved a significant amount of my earnings so that I could set up my future self through building a real estate portfolio. So again, was becoming successful at that. Again, that's personal. Nobody knows our net worth, but we get all the accolades for our business success.
yeah.
And that's what's interesting. So is that in entrepreneurship, with what is noticed kind of in a financial speaking terms, is that people assume we make a lot of money. The bigger we are, the bigger identity and our footprint is in kind of the entrepreneurial world. And, at the end of the day, we don't really know who's making money or not, but we're assuming, oh, Kevin's making a lot of money. Kristina's making a lot of money because they have these really successful podcasts and businesses and yada, yada, yada. So when we look at others and kind of just say, hey, that person has money or doesn't have money in the entrepreneurial world, we're really looking at it about, we're doing that off what we think their business success is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Personally, what real money is money is net worth. And so that's our asset value. It's what our investments are worth at the end of the day. And that's very personal. So people would not, unless you got asked specifically, Kevin, what's your net worth? Or Krisstina, what's your net worth? It's not visible. It doesn't get talked about. It's not recognized. It's not part of the equation. And so we really don't know like who's wealthy
Sure.
or not, because personal finance and wealth creation is invisible, because nobody sees my balance sheet. Nobody sees my financial statements. Nobody sees my bank accounts. Nobody can really see my investments. So that's that thing, is that what, again, I was doing both of these things. So I was building net worth through real estate, and I was building a successful business, and I had a multi-million-dollar business. It was growing super fast year over year. I was an icon in my industry, and people assumed, of course, I was making bazillions of dollars through my business. But what happened through that whole journey, Kevin, was I was so hell-bent on success and so hell-bent on building this portfolio that, was, many millions of dollars in net worth, like let's say $20 million net worth, which was I was hell-bent on building separate from my business, that I missed my life. So talk about relationships, like my marriage was suffering. I had to try to make kids events here and there. On vacations, I was on the phone constantly. because I was so after the reward of wealth and business success. And
Yeah.
then I got really sick and I was at the top of my career. My investments were doing great. I mean, you would look at me and you'd think, she has it made. Like that's the success story we're all after. But what I was doing is I was trading my wealth and happiness for success and money. And then I had this health crisis that took me down. And I thought I was healthy. I mean, I was running marathons for God's sake, but I was just burning the candle at both ends. I wasn't sleeping. I ate shit food. I wasn't focused on my wellness and health. Again, I thought somewhere, I think in the back of my subconscious, if I just make enough money and have enough success, I'll worry about the family and the happiness and the vacations later.
Yeah.
But what happened is when my health crumbled, I mean, I was out. And then I moved from being the success story to basically day to day fighting for my life. And now what happened is very quickly my business broke down, even though I had a big team and I thought it was a good business. The second the leader, was out, it started crumbling so fast. Here, it took years to build this thing, and it took basically 6 months for it to start breaking down. So that was this one thing. It's like, oh, if my body's not healthy, my body is my number one asset. So the business wasn't the focus. Saving my life became the focus. And the business, now granted, luckily I had wealth and net worth that I was able to live off of and keep things going. But what happened during this year and a half of going, just fighting and being in bed and couldn't leave my bed, and, it was a horrific story. I mean, I can't even tell you how dark and bad it was. But what I was left with at that time was this enormous amount of regret and remorse. So from a psychological, emotional standpoint, I was fighting physically for my life. I seen all my money just completely, my business deteriorating. I was going through money so fast, trying to find these life-saving things. And so the money was disappearing. Everything was my whole life was falling apart. And now my kids think their mom's not going to be here. And it was devastating. But out of that whole thing, I was so sad every day. I was, beyond all those other things, I was so sad because I was left this place like, oh my God, I'm dying. I haven't even lived yet. And this just awareness of like, what the F? I was chasing success and I was chasing money at the sacrifice of my life and my relationships, and taking all of that for granted, thinking that the prize was the success and the money. But what I was left with was just that is I'm so regretful that I didn't live. I have so much remorse that I didn't spend more time with these things I care about. All those places that I've been that I wasn't even present, I was always in the future.
Yeah.
So it's like this whole thing is coming out of that. That was like this desire of, oh my gosh, I've studied all these things and I've been successful at it. But I learned the lesson that everything's about relationships. And that's like your $1 million relationship. It's about the relationships we have, because what matters in life is love. And it's who we love and who loves us for who we are, for everything. And so when we can put our relationships first, our personal relationships first, and then the business relationships as a, kind of in the business context, but to know that what makes life good is the people in our life and who we get to experience life with, and then having the resources, time resources and money resources to be able to put presents under the tree for 7 kids and grandkids and create these memories and these experiences and be able to take the time to wrap them and stuff. So that's why I'm so passionate to teach money and business, but through the lens of successful business. All you entrepreneurs, is not the prize. Having a multi-million-dollar net worth is not the prize.
Yeah.
The prize is a really good, meaningful, fulfilling life. And then we can reverse engineer. But the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves, how much money is enough?
Yeah.
How much success is enough? Because all of that success and money comes at a trade-off one way or another.
Yeah.
So how much is enough that really is enough money for our business? And how am I a good business person that knows how to generate revenue, build a business, create enough profit, that profit's enough by being a good business person that funds my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that lifestyle includes the cost of living month to month today, but also how do I build this nest egg and this future self wealth that ultimately I can retire. I don't have to work this hard. And I have more, what wealth is, what not business success, but what wealth is wealth is time. The more wealth we have, the more control over our time we have, because our assets provide such, all or a good portion of our income that we get to have that time back that otherwise we have to spend churning out the month to month income. So anyway, that's kind of the story that's built in. And the reminder at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is, what's your number $1 million relationship?
Yeah.
Or kind of what's in that top 5 circle that makes it maybe it doesn't equate to $1 million in your bank account, but if you had $1 million in your bank account, what 5 relationships make that money worthwhile?
Yes. Yeah, man, that is really powerful stuff right there. And it's interesting because I look, I mean, the first big connection I made for these two guys, Perry and Brian, Perry Marshall and Brian Kurtz. It was 12 years ago. At the time, Brian Kurtz was working for a company called Boardroom Reports, and they were a big direct mail company. They sold publications, books, and all that, and they did it via direct mail. And they were trying to figure out the Google AdWords platform. And they were pulling their hair out over it. He's like, Kevin, he's like, this is not our thing. We don't have a clue what we're doing with it. And he's like, and I was like, well, I was like, do you know Perry Marshall and them guys? And he's like, well, I know of Perry. He's like, you know Perry? I'm like, yeah. I was like, Google AdWords is their thing, man. That's what they do. I was like, you need to talk with Perry and his team. And I was like, I'll send an email and I'll get you guys connected. And so Perry and them guys did help Boardroom out with the Google AdWords thing. But beyond that, Brian and Perry become really good friends. And about a year later, they're hosting this seminar in Washington, D.C. called the Titans of Direct Response. And of course, Brian, coming out of that world, he is a big, huge direct response marketing proponent. And so him and Perry were doing this event. I don't know how many entrepreneurs there were. There a couple hundred entrepreneurs had invested to be at that event. And the first day, opening day of that event, I'm getting text messages from like 3 or 4 of my friends because they were attending that event. And they're telling me, Kev, I'm here at this event that Perry and Brian are doing, and they're talking about you from stage in their opening comments right now, talking about how you're the guy that connected them, and this thing wouldn't even have happened if not for you being the one that connected them. And then my friend Paul Bingham, he sent me a message saying that. And then his last comment was, Kev, one never knows where a well-planted seed will sprout. And for me, that planted the seed for me that got me thinking, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could have a business where that's what I got to do all the time? And, through this, and like today, that is now a reality. That is a reality in such a big way. And yet, what you just talked about is that the biggest wins, the biggest success stories, they come from this relationship piece. Revenue was the byproduct of the relationship between Perry and Brian. It was the natural, organic byproduct of those two guys bringing their combined resources to do something together that neither one of them could have possibly achieved on their own. And they made such an impact that revenue was the natural byproduct of that. But it was relationship first, then revenue. And I could give you so many doggone examples of that. And I'm sure you could too. And even I remember I was telling you before we hit the recording, I got up this morning And my sock drawer, I mean, my doggone sock drawer in my dresser was full of socks again. Because, you wear a pair every day and it dwindles. And then every once in a while, it's like, oh, you open the door, it's like, wow, all my socks are there. Look at, like, you know what? I just do whatever I do, and something magically happens, and they just appear back in my drawer all clean and ready to go again. Well, that would be my wife. And I'm pretty doggone grateful and appreciative for that woman, for all that she does for me, for our kids, for our grandkids, and to be able to just have her in my life, and able that for me to have time to be able to have a business that supports my family in a way that makes me feel good as a husband and as a father, and so that I have that time of my life where I can be present for her too, and present for our children too. In fact, this morning I had an appointment at school. I took one of my daughters, and her and I went in to meet with one of her counselors at school and stuff, because she's got some stuff she's dealing with, and that I can set aside the time to be there for my daughter and advocate for her in this situation and stuff. That is incredibly important. And it's if more people understood that it's the relationships first. It's the relationships and the experiences we have with the people in our lives. And that can be business associates, it can be family, it can be friends, what have you. But when that is wealthy, then we are wealthy, and revenue can come as a natural byproduct and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I give a little bit of distinction there also in the way I think about it. So, and business is a context. When we're just talking business, when I teach business, and I have a business school, so I teach entrepreneurs kind of with great ideas and lifestyle entrepreneurs, like how to turn their passion into profit through building a profitable business. And part of that, one of those pieces and fundamentals of business is called relationship capital. And so that's a business term, but relationship capital means that it's money that's a result. Those relationships capitalize the business. And so there are many ways to create relationship capital. Like you have a very specific way you've done it, because your specific gift is relationships and connections and connect, what you do. And so, your relationship capital is directly tied to revenue, because it's really what your business model is. For everybody else also, in a different way, we always need to be thinking of relationship capital, because business is people to people. There's terms like B2B and B2C, and we're so excited about our product or our service or whatever we're promoting and marketing all the time. And as entrepreneur, we're passionate about this. But it's always to remember that, we can build a business that's very transactional, or we can build a business that's relational, or, a combination of the two. But it's just to keep in mind that the business is relationships. And so when we can put the relationships at the forefront, then asking the question, like, how does the business make money through the relationships? And every business model is different. Yeah. My business model, for example, I have something called joint ventures. And so the way the business makes a lot of revenue is through the success of these joint venture partnerships. And that's all relationship capital. So each business has that. And, it's just understanding that this relationship piece is a significant focus of the business. And you've mastered that, and to just keep coming back to it. Personally, where I separate it contextually in just a little bit of a distinction, is that I lost my marriage as a result of being so gung-ho on my business, Okay. And so I think so many entrepreneurs in this drive for success, we can be very savvy. I was great relationship capital in my business. I'm a relationship person. I've made my millions and millions of dollars through relationships. That's what I do. So business-wise, that was so obvious to me, but I was losing kind of my relationship with my time spent with my kids were little, and I was losing my marriage. Because it's like they got taken for granted, so I could go build this thing. And with the thing, like, I'm bringing all the money to the household, like we're living a great life. Like in my head, it's like, shouldn't that be good enough? That's what love is. I'm able to buy you anything that you want. but that's the piece. So again, kind of going back to what I was saying before, is just the priorities of things. Then when I was single, I still had a multi-million-dollar business. I'm succeeding in business, but life just wasn't the same. Like
Yeah.
it's not as fulfilling. It's more risky. It's more scary. It's all these different things. And so it's just keeping in focus the personal relational piece is, again, the success of the business is for the sake of like your thing that you're really grateful with your wife, and you've got these kids, and you've got the relationship, and the business success offers you this, but you have, it sounds like your kids and family and wife are so important, and the gratitude's there, that it's for the sake of what. And so that's it, like same business success, but my life was just, I don't know, it was not the same. And so
Yeah.
now, like getting a redo at that piece, the personal relationships, that's most important. That, my significant other now, like the security it provides that we're in this together. The business could fall apart. I could lose all the money. And if our relationship's intact and as healthy as it is in the thing, it really doesn't matter that much because we've got each other. Again, the relationship with my young adult children now, and I want the time to spend with them and the grandkids. They're all flying out and be able to afford to be able to fly them out and spend the time. That's why I'm working so hard, and to make sure that those moments aren't lost. And my health and my wellness, like to make sure that I have the time to meditate and to be outside in nature and to breathe and be gratitude and just really smell the roses.
Yeah.
So that's first. Now, am I still ambitious, and I still want money success and a business success? Yes, but not at the cost of these things. The business serves the personal relationships.
Yes.
So that's why I just see, I've made those mistakes, and I've seen so many entrepreneurs who sacrifice what's most important. In my family relationships are far more important than the relationship capital in the business. The relationship capital in the business is just part of the business. Some of them turn into friendships, but ultimately it's totally different. So I just like to make sure that we're prioritizing the purpose of why we work so hard as entrepreneurs.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Well, so now we've got this context set. So I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit. I'm gonna reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. And so, Krisstina, have you ever met or been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot be successful, I think, in life without having your mentors or the people who, it's either standing on the shoulder of giants, or that were the right person at the right time, or, shined a light on things you couldn't see to help you to see. I think, I speak for myself, but I'd say for all of us that have, had a good amount of success, that having leaders and mentors and coaches is always a part of our equation. So I had the great fortune of studying, being personally coached by a man named Gary Keller, who's currently a billionaire. And I studied with him at a young age. And so he certainly, I don't think I'd be where I am today. He taught me how to think like a business person and how to build business. And I mean, I learned so many things from him. Again, I just soaked it in a young age. Another mentor of mine, his name was Toby Hecht,
Okay.
and he's probably, he's worth over 100 million for sure, and studied with him for years. And he taught me business and again, how to build a business and all these kind of fundamentals of business. I studied under a man called Fernando Flores, and Fernando Flores is an amazing story, but he teaches life and the meaning of life and philosophically, and really how to establish a good life and human concerns and business concerns and how much money is enough. And I've studied under like Kawasaki and others when it comes to wealth creation, as far as like how to build real net worth and financial freedom. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on and on as far as there's been so many people who have been instrumental in my success, but less about the success, but more about shaping how I think. And that's what I want to do now. It's like I want to maybe just reshape the way we think is in my context, which is money and finance and wealth, but just to reshape how we think. Just sometimes it's just those little quantum little areas, which these teeny tiny shifts can make a radical shift in our trajectory and our overall, success in the future. So these mentors, sure, I learned from them, but ultimately they taught me how to think differently and powerfully and commonly and strategically and intentionally, and how to be these things. And now I'm just passionate about, where kind of I've achieved learning from them. Now I want to pass on that same, that same knowledge that I've learned from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what, you know, happens is that, like, yeah, we end up having these people that impact our lives in such a powerful way that we're just like, wow, we want to turn around and do the same exact thing. We want to just continue that on. And that's the way I look at the work that I get to do too. It's just I want to just continue using my gifts, my God-given talents, to make as big of an impact in the world as I possibly can. And it's all about relationships. And Krisstina, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And man, my gosh, for anybody that's, I imagine there's going to be a number of people that are like, man, Kevin, I really like Krisstina. I really like what she's all about. I love how she shows up. How are there any tools, any resources? How can they find out more about you and the work that you're doing, Krisstina?
There's, I always say easiest thing is to Google my name. I mean, there's several pages on Google, so it makes it pretty easy. But outside of that, in a more general context, is what I've created that's an action, like something to do, which sometimes is hard when you're listening on a podcast. But I have this quiz, and a lot of us have quizzes. But this quiz, it's a financial literacy quiz.
Okay.
And it takes 5 minutes, and it causes you to think. And by the end of taking this quiz, it's like, oh, yeah, I scored pretty high when it just comes to money in general. Or wow, maybe I scored less than I thought. So if we look at it a grade from, 50% is failing, 60% is failing, 70% is average, 80% above average, and 90% is, an A in the school context. I've had thousands of people take this. I mean, thousands of entrepreneurs, smart people building businesses. And I mean, that's who takes the quizzes. I'm on podcasts like these all the time. And the average score is 44%.
Wow. Wow.
So I just, take the quiz and see if you beat the 44%, because if you are, you're doing way better than average. And, I can go on with statistics, but less than 10% of our population is financially free or is on a trajectory to create that freedom. Yet it's something we all want. And the reason why that's the case is not because we're not working hard. It's not because we're not great people. We're not doing all the things. It's because we don't understand money. Yeah. And money is a discipline. It's something, it's knowledge based. If we want to not just pay our bills, but if we really want to build wealth and financial freedom, that, we'd have different statistics, but it's this kind of financial literacy since money's not taught in school. So this quiz, it's like I said, takes 5 minutes, super fun, super easy, but it's just kind of like a little mirror, like, maybe what if I was able to score higher? But that's great. So that's at wisemoneymethod.com/quiz, wisemoneymethod.com/quiz. And so the quiz is fun, but the exercise that I really encourage anybody to give it a try, like, why not? like I said, the quiz is just a quick little fun little thing to do, but attached to that quiz is this workbook. And it's a multi-page workbook that's a step-by-step fill in the blank exercise that will help guide you on knowing the answers to these questions to be able to get 100%. And it creates kind of this awareness of maybe where these money gaps are, like these money knowledge gaps or lack of awareness is. And it will give you, by filling in the blanks, it will help you come up with the number that answers what I think is the most important money question that we can ask ourselves, which is how much money is enough? And when we start there in this whole journey, it's amazing how our financial life really turns out differently. So right, that's a place to start outside of Google and gives you something to do. And it's a really fun exercise. It's really valuable.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Krisstina, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap here?
No, I love your podcast. And again, I think that the takeaway probably for all of your podcast is just the importance of relationships and to they're worth $1 million one way or another.
That's right. Well, once again, Krisstina, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I am just really excited to get this out and to share it with a whole lot of other entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs. So thank you again.
My pleasure.